going to present some of the results of my work that have been already published in an article titled Pain, Life and God, Theodicy Informed by Biology and Evolutionary Medicine. And some of these new results will also be published in a joint book together with Professor Rojčák, hopefully in the beginning of next year. So, quote from Ness and Shulkin: "Pain always seems like a problem, but usually it's part of the solution." End of quote. So the experience of pain and suffering is familiar to almost all members of humanity. Pain overwhelms our bodies, consciousness, changes the way we are in the world, the way we treat ourselves and others. It also changes our relationship with God. Pain and suffering often motivate people to pray, hoping for healing and deliverance from pain. But it can also arouse anger toward the indifferent God. Pain hurts, and it is almost as we are in a state we should not be in. It is as we are in a state of punishment, even though we may not be guilty, as if we do not deserve to be so fragile. Pinsett puts it beautifully, quoting, "We are not what we should be," end of quote. So we opened this lecture with the words of the American physician Randolph Nesse, the founder of evolutionary medicine, who announced a different view of the phenomenon of pain. Namely, if pain is shaped by the evolutionary development of living beings, in what way can this insight inform theodicy? So, the plan of the lecture is that after a short theological and theodician reflection and introduction to evolutionary medicine, we will attempt to provide a definition of pain, how pain is triggered in the human body, and how pain is studied in animals. This will give us an evolutionary insight into the development of pain in living beings. Then, we will try to see how theology and theodicy can benefit from the insights of biology and evolutionary medicine into the physical dimension of pain. Now, given the time frame and the lecture of Professor Luis Oviedo, I will shorten this passage on theological and theodician prelude. So, the theological tradition of reflection on the human condition, which inevitably includes pain, suffering, and death, abounds with attempts to make sense of these conditions. Together with the degree of suffering and the context of the concrete situation, the severity of pain is the fundamental moment by which we evaluate the gravity of the evil, the injustice, the crime, the injury that a living being endures. The phenomenon of pain is therefore inseparable from theological and theodician reflections on the human condition, God, and evil. Shortly, usually in theology, when we are speaking about pain and suffering, the reflections go to Jesus, who experienced emotional and physical pain. They go to also Adam and Eve and their disobedience. And we have heard today that since St. Paul and the 5th chapters of Romans, Adam is the one who is considered that through whom mortality and sin became part of human conditions. So, from a theological point of view, perhaps we could say that pain is an important factor in a dynamic relationship between A, the past state of integrity and original holiness characterized by initially pain-free creation, B, the present state of sin, pain and suffering, and C, the future state of new heaven without pain that the faithful invoke every time they pray, Our Father. So in the plethora of available views today, and given too close relationship of pain and suffering, it is understandable then to encounter everyday views that proclaim pain and human frailty as a kind of punishment, for some even as the inheritance of Adam's disobedience. But is this the right category for the phenomenon of pain? Is pain, as part of human mortality and imperfection, a punishment? Theodicy, on the other hand, argues for an omnipotent and morally perfect God in the face of natural and moral evil in the world. That humans and some other animals feel pain is prima facie seen as a bad thing that raises the problem of evil, says Eleanor Stump. However, there are cases where enduring pain is voluntary and therefore not bad per se, such as, let's say, painful training by professional athletes. Stump therefore points out that, quoting, pain is not necessary for something to be an evil which human beings suffer, end of quote. Also, another very important figure in theodicy is Southgate, that eliminates pain in non-human creatures as a problem for theodicy. It seems that the emphasis is on the moment of suffering, while physical pain is primarily placed in the realm of a biomedical phenomenon that can be eliminated to some degree. Nevertheless, in the next chapters, we will attempt to provide insights that point to the mind-body dualism that causes this unclear and often oversimplistic division between pain as a physiological sensation and suffering as a psychological response to pain. For example, studies show that unwanted breakups with partners cause emotional pain or suffering that activate the same neural architecture as when we feel physical pain, showing just how connected the two phenomena are. Furthermore, could it be that pain is a fundamental phenomenon of the human condition and a basis for most kinds of suffering experiences? Or we are perhaps dealing with the paradox of the inseparability of pain and suffering. Pain is, most of these cases, is the first and immediate sign of possible evil, moral or natural, suffered by living beings. The human face opens the otherwise closed worlds of others and inevitably points to the pain that dominates the organisms. Perhaps we can say that without pain, there will be no need for theodicy. Of course, the aim of this talk is not to make a clear distinction between pain and suffering. The goal is a better understanding of the phenomenon of pain, which is usually considered bad, with consequences for theodicy. Given the multidimensional nature of pain, we need an interdisciplinary approach. So that's why we are entering the evolutionary medicine and pain. So evolutionary theory, like universal acid, as Dennett frames it, spills over into and alters all fields, including medicine and religion. Evolutionary medicine is the field that uses the principles of evolutionary biology to better combat disease. By looking at the body and diseases through an evolutionary lens, scientists hope that, quoting Nesse, diseases will make more and more sense, end of quote, which will then help societies with prevention and treatment. One of the topics in the field of evolutionary medicine is pain, which is viewed in the context of the evolution of life. Building on the biological perspective on pain, researchers are looking at, quoting Walter and Williams, the mechanisms and functions of pain from an evolutionary perspective, end of quote. Now, this approach leads to questions such as how and by what mechanisms the sensation of pain arises in living things? Which species are able to feel pain? How the ability to feel pain leads to selective benefits, and so on. But also one very important question is, why does pain hurt? Namely, why just don't we have an information, let's say that our tooth is deteriorating, why does it need to hurt so much? Why do we have this element of pain in our phenomenal consciousness? So today we have, quoting again Nesse and Shulkin, a rich body of knowledge that describes the mechanisms that mediate and regulate pain at levels from genes to molecules to tissues and organs. Yet the question of which areas of the brain are responsible for pain is still hotly debated. We still are not sure about the pain matrix in the brain. In the evolutionary framework, scientists are gaining more and more information about the evolution of mechanisms and behaviors related to pain, but they are still far away from a decisive answer. So let us now look what we now know about the pain. So the definition of pain is an ancient aporia that arose from the ancient Greeks' dualistic view of the human being as a unity consisting of soul and body. Hence, the definition had its many twists and turns between pain as an emotion and pain as a sensation. We will now look at a more recent definition of pain by the International Association for the Study of Pain. They define pain as an unpleasant sensory and emotional experience associated with or resembling that associated with actual or potential tissue damage. End of quote. It is clear from the definition that it is recognized that pain has two sides, a physical sensation and an emotional experience, which may perceive pain as an intrinsic feature or as a consequence. Now, the definition is further clarified by six key points. It is stated that the pain is a personal experience, that pain and nociceptions are different phenomena, that individuals learn the concept of pain through their experiences, that a person's report of an experience as pain should be respected. This is very important also in the field of medicine. That pain has an adaptive role but may have adverse effects, and that verbal description of pain is just one way of behaviors to express pain. If some creature is not able to communicate the pain she is feeling through, it doesn't mean that they are not experiencing pain as such. So pain in body, very shortly. We have seen that pain is a multi-dimensional phenomenon, but also noted that, quoting Philemon, the experience of pain is characterized by tremendous inter-individual variability, which is driven by multiple biopsychosocial factors. End of quote. Biopsychosocial factors are emphasized in the biopsychosocial model of pain, where social factors also play a role, not just brain and mind. People who see themselves as members of society may also experience pain when, for example, they lose status or receive stigma, have their hearts broken, are exploited, or experience social trauma. The experience of pain also changes at different levels as people develop from birth to adulthood, and the management or control of pain varies between people. Now, we are more familiar and are more using, especially in theology, the biomedical model of pain, which considers pain as an expression of discoverable disease processes, and that there is a reliable connection between pathological changes and clinical features. So basically, we do know that our body is capable of feeling all kinds of different sensations, that the perception of painful stimuli is based on specific receptors and pathways that is called nociception, from Latin nocere, to harm. And for example, that on the surface of our skin we have receptors that take note of any kind of damage happening to our tissue, and very quickly that chemical in first step, and then electronical reaction travels through our spinal cord up to the thalamus and our brain, and then these waves can cause, don't have to, but can cause the sensation or feeling of brain. Now, because the brain contains maps of the entire body, we can quickly find out where the damage is occurring, where it hurts. So, in a way, although often unpleasant, pain warns us that our bodies are in danger and can thus save our lives. At the same time, we learn and remember dangerous and painful situations, so we can adjust our motivation and avoid these situations in the future. Our past experiences of pain can also influence the way we experience and respond to similar pain stimuli. So we can say that pain is the survival tool of life. Of course, if we don't learn from pain, then perhaps we will repeat these dangerous situations and be badly hurt. As we heard in the previous lecture, there are people with deficiency to feel pain, and unfortunately their life expectancies are much shorter. So pain in animals. We have seen the problem of defining pain. It seems that the emphasis is on the subjective experience, and because of this, we are facing a homocentric definitions of pain. Moreover, subjective experience is primarily verbally mediated, and all other animals cannot verbally express their painful states. Of course, it is pointed out that there are other expressions of pain, but it is obvious that additional effort is needed to define pain in terms of all living organisms. Moreover, the emphasis on the subjective dimension to some extent, quoting Walter and Williams, eclipses the motivational functions of pain that are key to an evolutionary understanding. End of quote. Given that most humans can give indirect information about the pain they feel, the question arises as to how pain is defined in relation to non-verbal animals. To find out whether animals feel pain, scientists conduct comparative studies at different levels: anatomical, chemical, behavioral, and motivational. So what do we know today? Today we know that mammals possess the neuroanatomic and neuropharmacologic components involved in transduction, transmission, and perception of noxious stimuli. Therefore, in short and simple way, it can be assumed that mammals feel pain. Furthermore, certain fish species, like rainbow trout, not all fishes, but certain kind, possess a nociceptive system whose biology, quoting Sneddon, is strikingly similar to that found in mammals, leading some scientists to recognize this as a sufficient evidence for the experience of pain in fish. From an evolutionary perspective, fish is interesting because, again Sneddon, phylogenetically, fishes are the closest vertebrate group to invertebrates and gave rise to vertebrate tetrapods. However, other scientists argue that the prerequisite for feeling pain is phenomenal consciousness. So unlike mammals and birds, fish do not have the neural architecture for phenomenal consciousness and therefore do not feel pain. This is called the no cortex, no cry argument. One of contra-arguments is the multiple realization argument, which claims that pain might be realized differently in humans and other creatures. And now we will just quickly go through through invertebrates. So in studies concerning invertebrates, subjective issues are set aside and pain is defined on the basis of functional properties and organism's behavior when confronted with noxious stimuli that might indicate the experience of pain. For example, the focus is often on cephalopods, especially octopuses, decapods, and so on. The results of studies conducted with octopuses led to the conclusion that they have sentience, are likely to feel pain, and have the ability to suffer. Also, we have results from crustaceans, crabs, lobsters, and crayfish. The presence of nociceptors has not been so firmly established, but they can detect extreme heat and avoid situation that has extreme heat. Also in insects, for instance in Drosophila or fruit flies and worms, we have mixed results about their behavior avoiding noxious stimuli. So the argument is that the realization of pain in animals may be perceived in ways that we humans are not aware of, and elicit behaviors that are not similar to ours. For one example is paramecium, single-celled organism. It has no central nervous system, but in the face of danger, it can exhibit behaviors associated with pain. And sometimes it is even called a swimming neuron. So if it exhibits some kind of acid, it will run away. So in this way, we can point out that maybe paramecia, as Mikkel puts it, can realize pain in a yet unknown way. The study of the issue of pain in animals is definitely gaining a momentum, or animal sentience, and it has it could have great impact also on theodicy. So we can say that pain is an old system that, from the evolutionary perspective, are now a little bit cut because of the time. From the evolutionary perspective, we can say that it developed from single-cell organisms to multi-complex organisms, and that pain offered several evolutionary advantages. This is important, I skip this, that when we established a moderately complex brain in nature, changes in the pain system have been slight, not to high degree of changes occurred. So pain is, according to Broom, an old system which has probably changed rather little during vertebrate evolution, end of quote. So the evolutionary advantages of pain are that action can be taken when damage occurs, consequent learning allows the minimizing of future damage, and where the pain is chronic, behavior and physiology can be changed to ameliorate adverse effects. And now closing. So what use can the biological and evolutionary medicine perspective on pain have for theology and theodicy? So just concluding, we have seen that through these insights that pain did not enter the world with Adam and Eve, or even given my lack of expertise in theological considerations, allow a simple and short example of possible integration of previously stated insights with the thought of Thomas Aquinas. Now, we are not developing his thought in depth here, just providing an example. So according to Aquinas, Adam's body in Eden, in this state of innocence, was ontologically the same as the body of contemporary humans. So the nature of Adam and the nature of contemporary humans are the same. For example, as Professor Roszczak made an example, Adam slept in Eden because sleep is a natural need of the body. Now this raises the question, was Adam able to feel the pain in Eden? What would happen if God overrode the cessation of pain? The entire human body is in some way sensitive to noxious stimuli, from the skin to the various brain centers involved. Therefore, perhaps a more likely solution for those thinking about pain-free state of Eden would be an environmental condition in Eden that posed no risk of major physical injury. So according also to Professor Roszczak, Aquinas would also support the idea that the external environment would not have caused Adam pain or suffering. The abolition of nociception and the feeling of pain would affect the functioning and the whole nature of the human body, if we can call it human at all without these functions. Of course, anything is possible for the omnipotent God, but why would he create human nature as it is and then suspend it to such a great extent? If we now turn to our present state, we can ask the question, can the grounding of the whole creation in pains be seen as punishment for sin, or in the category of human evil? I believe not, for we have seen that pain is part of the solution of living things, an evolutionary adaptation in an attempt to survive and assure the next generation. Physical pain as such has nothing glorious or tragic about it, and therefore cannot be placed under the concept of natural evil, as if we would say that our vestibular senses are part of natural evil. We could say that pain has value from a biological point of view. It has a positive value because it is necessary for survival. On the other hand, it has a negative value when it has a negative impact on body or social and psychological well-being, for example in chronic pain. So pain is not just a matter of sensation, it is a biological, psychological and socially conditioned phenomenon. The attempt to draw a clear line between pain and suffering goes back to Greek dualism. It is still a feature of reflection in the field of theodicy that one avoids speaking of pain as a fundamental issue, as if it is downplayed because it is only a physical reaction. Given the difficult task and the fragility of theodicy, including its new evolutionary considerations and the inclusions of animals and even plants, a theodicy that takes pain into account in its fullness will certainly be able to give a better answer to the question of pain, suffering and evil that accompany life from the beginning. Concluding, although the absence of pain is by no means the main goal of life after death, we believe that thanks to the evolutionary perspective of pain, we can better understand the intuitive longing of humanity and its hope for the final state when God will wipe all tears from our eyes. A pain-free state after death stands in supreme contrast to all the fictions of life that tries to avoid pain, from single-cell organisms to humans. Thank you for your time.